This time, Aston Villa's tailor-made solution back to the big time.
Because I'll stay a wild rover forever and more.
Hello and welcome to By Far the Greatest Team, a podcast in which football fans attempt the impossible to rank once and for all who is the greatest team of all time. My name is Graham Dunn, making the case as ever for Oxford United in that category. And joining me, the king of data himself, it's Rooney.
Hey, Graham. I'm really looking forward to this one. It's going to give us an opportunity, feeling good about the opportunity to talk about Graham Taylor, someone who I absolutely adore. And it will be a thrill to just say great things about the great man himself. But before we get into the managers, on the topic of managers, last week, your Schalke team, one of the worst ever teams in Germany, they had 5 managers in one single season. So I went away, did a bit of research, and I think we've covered this before. Palermo in the 2015-16 season actually had 8 different managers in a single season. 2 of them, Balladini and Inacci, actually returned for 2 spells. So not only did they have 8 managers, they had the same manager twice, if that makes sense. 8 managers in a single season.
That is impressive. I won't make the same joke again about it must be Udinese rather than Watford owners there. I think it must be the Pozzi family, one way or the other. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, no, this will be a great opportunity. And I like this story a lot because it gives us a chance to talk about Graham Taylor. But actually, I think this is almost like a forgotten period of Graham Taylor. Actually, it gets a little hidden away by, people remember his Watford years and they remember the England years for lots of different reasons. And actually, this period at Aston Villa is actually, one of his most successful periods. And I'm delighted we've got joining us a Villa fan who's much more familiar with this period than us. Welcome, Stuart Murray. Hi, Stuart. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. You?
Yeah. Okay. This Graham Taylor side, it's got there's a fondness in your heart for them?
Well, this team so when Graham Taylor's come in, I was 7 years old. So this is banging where I'm kind of like starting to get into football. I'm kind of pretty obsessed for them 3 years that Graham Taylor's there. When Graham Taylor's gone, I'm kind of starting to come out the back end of it, starting to think about girls a little bit, But in and around then, it was the obsession completely. So,
yeah. I presume at that age, you're then surrounded by people who are telling you, this is rubbish. European champions 5 years ago.
Well, my brother always says about this time, he kind of says, this is when the ground was empty. And Graham Taylor said that. He said when he come to Villa, the problem was because it held 46,000, and crowds across the board were terrible. In 1987, Graham Taylor said when the players had come out, there'd be 15,000 fans in there, which would be about the 3rd highest attendance in the country, but the ground would look empty. As soon as the players would come out, they'd be deflated, you see. It was a weird time, but all I remember is I loved it. I used to, I was absolutely in heaven. So I didn't notice the empty seats.
Oh, that's brilliant. Jamie, Graham Taylor, so leading up to this, he's obviously had huge success already in his career. And he's another manager. We talked about it with Steve Coppell, starting his managerial career quite early. But Graham Taylor starts, Rick. I mean, he is the youngest manager in the league, isn't he, when he starts?
28 years old, Lincoln City. Similar to Coppell, similar to Clough. Football career at Grimsby Town was cut short for injury. And he's kind of left, what do I do now for the rest of my life as a young man still? And took over at Lincoln City, and did a pretty decent job off the bat there. And that brought in the reputation where he took Lincoln up and then decided to go back down again to take Watford back up. And he took Watford up in record quick time from the 4th tier to the top tier. An incredible achievement, and a team I think we'll probably get to do at some point. So we get another opportunity to talk about that incredible old kit. But I think that was the profile that Taylor had kind of marked out. And he was still a relatively young man when he took over at Aston Villa.
And it's quite interesting, isn't it, that Taylor, throughout his career, you can see he likes the challenge, and he sort of almost spurns the most logical steps. So when he takes the Lincoln job, you're right, he goes back down to take take the Watford job. And then when he leaves Watford, actually, he takes a step downwards because Villa have just been relegated. And there's obviously, I mean, I guess there's something about Taylor that likes the rebuilding task.
Well, when he took over at Villa, we were in a terrible state. So we've won the European Cup in 81, 82, and we've got Tony Barton in charge. What is interesting about this time is that Doug Ellis, but the thing is, people don't realise this, is he was the chairman before we won the league, and after we won the European Cup. No, honestly, he left. He was ousted, and in that time when he was ousted, we won the league and the European Cup. So then he's come back when Tony Barton's in charge. By all accounts, Doug Ellis don't want to talk about the European Cup or the league. And then he gets rid of Tony Barton after a couple of seasons, I think. And he brings in a bloke called Graham Turner. Not Graham Taylor,
yes.
Graham Turner.
Yeah.
And he's 37 years old, manager of Shrewsbury. And I think they're in like second division or third division. And he's brought him in and it's kind of like, he might be an up and coming manager, but it's a bit left field, you know?
Yeah.
So he's got Graham Turner in. He doesn't give him any money. If you actually looked at the team so Graham Turner's there the season we go down, but during that season, the first few games we get him battered. We lose to Nottingham Forest 6-0, and then Billy McNeil comes in.
Yes.
Yeah. And so this season, Billy McNeil actually he was in charge of Man City before Villa. So during that season, he managed to get 2 teams relegated. So Billy McNeil come in, and he's a big name, isn't he? Obviously.
Yeah,
he is.
He's come in and he managed to turn it around a little bit, but then we started sliding. The club was in turmoils. I've read Gary Thompson's book, and he said it was just a mess. And when Gary Thompson turned up at Villa, Gary Shaw said to him, "You're 2 years too late, mate. The place is gone." So you've actually got a change room where there's loads of good players in there, but the atmosphere is terrible. So, for instance, you've got like Tony DeRigo, Paul Elliott, all good players. Loads of the European Cup winning team are still there. Alan Evans, Gary Williams, Gary Shaw. But Gary Shaw is injured by now.
Yeah.
You've actually got the basis of a good team, but the attitude's wrong. So then when Graham Taylor came in, we're in the second division, and he said the problem with a big club is when it starts to fall, it can fall a lot quicker. He says, but on the other hand, if you turn it round, then it will come back that bit quicker as well.
Yeah.
So he said when he's come in, I think our first home game we lost to the Blues 2-0. It was awful. But he kind of he got rid of all these players that were Champagne Charlie's kind of players. Dorigo wanted to go to Chelsea, and Elliott went to Pisa.
Didn't he get rid of Andy Gray as well, quite quickly?
Andy Gray, went to West Brom. He got rid of Andy Gray because of his personality. He was too strong a personality. Yeah, he would have got rid of Gary Thompson, but Gary Thompson was injured at the time, so he couldn't sell him. But it ended up Gary Thompson went on to play a big part in that season, getting us up. So he's come in and he brought in players to get us out of that division. So he brought in Kevin Gage, who ended up being there the whole time that Graham Taylor was there. He's a really good player. David Hunt, Steve Sims, who was the centre-back for Watford.
It was at Watford with him,
and it was kind of like players just to get us out of that league. And he also brought in Alan McAnally. So he's got Alan McAnally, 200 grand from Celtic. He's brought in McAnally. He kind of brought in McAnally to replace Gary Thompson. But Gary Thompson's injured, and they ended up playing up front together. So I know that Graham Taylor's got a reputation for big men, but that's ridiculous.
It's not one big man, one little man, is it? That is two proper units.
McAnally, though, was a great footballer. You know, he was really good on the ball. But that season in the second division, we was brilliant away from home, scratching about at home. So that was my first game. That's the first game I ever went to was that season. And it was against Palace, and we won 4-1. Mark Walters scored a hat-trick. But then just after that, he left to go to Glasgow Rangers.
Yeah.
First black player to play in Scotland.
Wow.
He was a brilliant player. He was too good for it. He was too good for us.
Yes.
Yeah, so the second division, we came up on the last day with the same points and the same goal difference as Middlesbrough, but we'd scored more goals. Yeah. So, but Middlesbrough still came up through playoffs.
Yeah, so that's incredible. So was that presumably was decided Villa edged it on having scored more goals?
Scored more goals.
Yeah, I think it was 6 more goals. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, goals scored. What a way to decide it.
It is funny, and you touched on it there, Stuart, that the Taylor has had that reputation for long ball football, and I think this goes to some extent. I always think with Taylor there was a degree of football snobbery about what he'd achieved, and that people never really took his achievements seriously. They were quite Route One, but they were far from the only Route One side there.
It's the way it was played.
I thought Taylor was more pragmatic. I think he kind of blended the idea of direct football, and he was very classic. I mean, at Villa, I think as well, Stu, correct me if I got it wrong, he was classic, like 4-4-2. He liked his wide men. He liked his workers in midfield, and he liked his big guys up front, as you already mentioned. But I think he was more pragmatic because he did like a bit of creativity. He wasn't at the far end of creativity. And we probably can touch on a bit of that with the England time, with the Chris Waddle scenario. He definitely was a pragmatic manager that used efficiency. And I think some of that, because there was a relationship between Charles Hughes, the former FA coach of the youth through the 70s and the 80s, quite an interesting character, actually, quite, I think, ahead of his time, in my view, in terms of what he was doing in football. And Taylor had a relationship with him, and I think there was some influence. I mean, Charles Hughes' influence over, I think, John Beck, Cambridge United, Graham, was definitely influenced by Charles Hughes. Did that come into his Taylor's thought process? Was Charles Hughes an influence, or was Taylor a man of his own football, his own making?
With like from hearing through hearsays, I know Andy Gray, when he played one game for England under Graham Taylor,
yeah,
and he got hooked at half time, and he said that Graham Taylor told him from kickoff to get it up and kick it out as high up the field as you can. And he said, I'm making my international debut and I'm being told to kick it out. That's what that's something from what I've heard. But Graham Taylor, we'll touch on it later, but the signings he made, the 89-90 season, a player that didn't work out but he signed was Adrian Heath. You ain't going to buy Adrian Heath if you're not looking to play a bit of football when you get it up there.
Yeah.
You might want to get it up there soon, but that is the way football was played then. You know, wingmen were everyone had two wingers. Yeah,
absolutely.
You know, that was bread and butter, wasn't it? Really. Yeah, and I don't remember him putting loads of sand in the corners. He definitely got a reputation at Watford, and it seemed to me a little bit of just arrogance. You know, like Glenn Hoddle, didn't he? Before, when they were warming up, he just kept kicking the ball up in the air. When Spurs were warming up against Watford, just trying to take the, But, at Watford, he had John Barnes and Nigel Callaghan on the wings. These are good footballers. He probably got that reputation because of, at Watford, people almost having the ump with, what's this team doing? I didn't really see a lot of Watford, but.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think he was pragmatic. I think he was balanced. I think he definitely played like what they probably call these days positions of maximum opportunity, where you'd move the ball into spaces where you're going to give yourself the best possible chance to get goals. But I think he had a clear identity in terms of like fast wingers, balanced midfield, and balancing the creativity. I think, like you said, Stu, he definitely liked a bit of creativity. He went on and managed Paul Gascoigne at England, the most creative player we've probably seen in this country for a long time. But he was very pragmatic in that sense as well. And I think that's where, it's easy to look down on a team like Watford, isn't it? And like to say this young upstart is bringing this team, they're playing a brand of football that maybe isn't easy on the eye, but it's aesthetics versus pragmatism. Football matches about winning games. There's no right or wrong way to do it. And I think Graham Taylor was a more balanced, he had a balanced style than his reputation that has probably preceded him. Exciting football as well. Any team that plays wingers is always going to be exciting. Fast wingers. And he took I think Nigel Callaghan, he took with him to Villa as well, didn't he?
He got him over at Villa, but he was he didn't do too well. I think by all accounts he's a great player, but a bit lazy, so he didn't. Well, that's just what you hear, like when you're reading the books and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tony Daly there.
Yeah, what a player Tony Daly was. I love
Tony Daly. Tony Daly, unplayable,
Yeah.
Like there was periods in the 89-90 season where, oh my God, he was literally terrorising fullbacks. That He was. I think he got in a couple of squads. He didn't quite get, but like I know that Taylor picked Daly, so people will say, "Oh, he picked Daly," so it doesn't really count. The caps don't really count. But Bobby Robson picked him. Bobby Robson picked him. He didn't get on the pitch, but Bobby Robson had him on the bench a couple of times.
Oh, Tony Daly, it was just he was ludicrously fast, wasn't he?
Yeah.
There is quite a turnover of the squad in that first season, and another player who joins sort of towards the end is obviously becomes a very significant player for Villa is David Platt, isn't it?
Oh, so David Platt, yeah. So he's come from Crewe for 200 grand. At the time, I think Everton wanted him as well. But Taylor's actually gone there and done the scouting. Platt's come in. He was amazing at just scoring, just arriving and scoring goals. I've heard Platt talk. I think it was it might be McAnally talk about where Platt's come, and at the end of season, McAnally and Gary Thompson have noticed that Platt's giving them a wide berth, and I think Graham Taylor had warned David Platt to stay away from it. So he was a great player. If you speak to Villa fans, people outside of Villa would say David Platt would probably be Graham Taylor's greatest signing. But if you spoke to any Villa fans or in and around my age, they would say Gordon Cowns brought Gordon Cowns back from Bury for 250 grand,
yeah.
And Paul McGrath would, without question, be Graham Taylor's best signing. Yeah. 400 grand from Man United.
McGrath's incredible, actually, because he signs him for, and Jeremy, you'll probably be familiar with this. I mean, McGrath's 30 at the time. He's got some ropey old knees.
Yeah.
I mean, presumably, United think he's a busted flush at this point. And he goes on to, he plays more games for Villa than he does United.
Yeah, he was always a quality player. I mean, there was the rumours at the time that there was quite a bit of a drinking culture at United. And
I think there might have been a bit of that.
Was one of the ringleaders. And I think Alex Ferguson was just trying to stamp his authority in the early days of United. But I think Ferguson would admit that getting rid of Paul McGrath when he did was a mistake, because he did go on to be an absolute sensational player for, I don't know, it felt like another 7-8 years at Villa. Even though he'd been written off with dodgy knees, he definitely didn't look like a player at dodgy knees. He looked like a player, a Rolls Royce, an absolute Rolls Royce of a footballer. And I think Taylor replaced Martin Keown with Paul McGrath. Was it about the same time that Keown left?
Yeah, I've read that in Martin Keown's book, actually, where he says that he didn't tell me he was getting Paul McGrath because I might have stayed. He wouldn't have stayed, but it's a good line, So that second season, when we've survived, I think we was just above the relegation zone. And guess who went down? Middlesbrough. A point less than us. So in 2 seasons, the only difference between Villa and Middlesbrough was 1 point.
Incredible.
That season, Alan McAnally and Martin Keown were our best two performers. Probably not our best players, because I'd say Cowns was our best player.
Yeah.
But and Platt, obviously. But that season, Keown was performing really well. In the season we'd come back up. Yeah, he went to Everton for about 700 grand. And McGrath came in to replace him. We didn't want to Keown was brilliant. He was looking, he was an exceptional defender. I think from reading his book, as soon as he'd come over to Villa, he might have been regretting it. He's left Arsenal.
Yeah.
And he was in that, and he was playing a few games. He started to get in the team with Tony Adams, but I think he weren't fully in the team, and he maybe was a bit impatient. So he's come over to Villa, and the first season he was there, if you look at the players on the list that we've got, you look down it, you'd go, that's a good team. Like players like Steve Hunt had played for England, like he was at Villa, and Simon Stainrod was apparently a decent player.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's looking down the list, and he's got all these players. So he's come over, and then we've got relegated, So
Gordon Cowans is a fascinating one, actually, because I kind of remember him from the initial stage, his initial period with Villa and being part of that title winning and European Cup winning side. And I'd sort of forgotten that he came back. But actually, he's having read a little bit around it and hearing you talk about him, Stuart, he's a really central player here, isn't he?
if you was to look up a Villa poll for greatest players of all time, it would be him and Paul McGrath would be 1 and 2. And
Yeah.
it just depends what way round they'd be in the poll. But they will always be the two. First and second. Obviously, I don't remember him from his original time, but when he's first come through, if you look on YouTube, you see the goal against Juventus where he's won the ball, he's then taken on a player, he's then sprayed the ball out, and then he's got in the box and done a diving header to score the goal. It's like he's done everything. He was absolute class. Whenever something good's happening, it might be Platt finishing it off, but it's Cowles that's put the ball in every time. You know, do you remember the game against Inter Milan when we beat them 2-0 at home? That was Dr. Joseph Engros' season, yeah?
I was.
Okay,
yeah. Platt scored, and Platt did look great that day, but Cowles is the one that's put it on a plate for him. You know, Cowles was an amazing player.
I remember him briefly the first time round, but I remember him more the second time round and towards the end of his career as well in the early 1990s. And he was still an absolute luxury player. He's just one of these players that just seemed to understand time and space so well. And he just seemed to feel that he was slowing the game down. He seemed to have you described his goal against the diving header, where he seems to have every attribute. But he's kind of like Pirlo before we saw Pirlo, that kind of deep lining midfielder, but that had every kind of trick in the book, but could also play up the pitch when needed to in that number 10 role.
And he's not, on the face of it, I mean, he's not what you would say an archetypal Graham Taylor player, is he? He's not the kind of, when we think about
into it.
It sort of shows his sort of flexibility, and that, to some extent, he had the players he had at Watford because Watford were underdogs making their way up the leagues. When he, if he could have like quality ball players, he would have them.
Well, Gordon Cowles, if you wanted to, like the thing is, what I would say about Gordon Cowles is he made it look effortless. Yeah, he made playing football look effortless. And that Juventus goal, if you see the way he sidesteps round the player, and this is a Juventus team that are going to go on and win the European Cup. This is a quality team, and he is just he takes the ball around the player like you're saying, Pirlo. I love that. That's brilliant, but. I've heard people say that if he was at Spurs, he would have had 100 caps.
Yeah,
because he was that good. But as far as the Graham Taylor buying players that were decent, that were quality, yeah, completely. He, like I say, he brought in McGrath, Platt, and Cowles. He brought them three in, and they're gonna, and then. There's another player that he brought that a lot of people actually know about. In the 89-90 season, do you remember when teams would go on mid-season tour?
Yeah.
There would be, you'd get knocked out of the FA Cup and you'd have a free weekend. Villa went to Trinidad and Tobago and they come back with Dwight York. So within about a season and a half, Graham Taylor's brought four absolute legends for Villa. And guess what? If you add them all up, that's under £1 million.
Yeah. It's
crazy.
This goes back to what I say about him being balanced. I think he was perfectly balanced. He understood the pragmatism and the hard effort that was required to win football matches, but he also knew you needed a bit of flair and creativity. And I think he just he balanced it out enough. And that's why he did like these creative players, but he didn't overload his teams with creative players. He put them in the key positions in order to allow the team to function. We're breaking down the stereotypes, Graham. That was the whole point, to put Graham Taylor in the place he deserves.
Do you want me to bring back the stereotypes? Because in the 88-89 season, he does also sign Ian Olney and Ian Ormonroyd.
Brilliant. Yeah.
He does like a big striker.
Yeah, so he got Ormonroyd from Bradford. And when he's brought Ormonroyd, he was an actual record signing for Villa. I think it was 600 grand.
Wow.
And Graham Taylor used to love the double signing. Like when you unveil two players at the same time.
Yes, yeah.
He wants to dance around both of them, doesn't he? He loves
it. He used to love it.
Just loves balance.
And then one time he brought Andy Gray and Stuart Gray on the same day. So,
do you know what? What I like about that, he actually sold Andy Gray and he bought Andy Gray, I think, in the same season, didn't he?
He must have.
He sold one Andy Gray off to West Brom, as you mentioned, and the other Andy Gray from Crystal Palace.
And then another time he's got Ormonroyd and Callahan. He brought them two both at the same time. So he's got them. Villa are in a slump. I think it's is it February when we brought them?
Yes.
Might be February, yeah. So we just lost 4-0 at Forest, and we can't get anything going. So he's brought Ormondroyd and Callaghan in, and that season neither of them really took off. You know, Callaghan. If I was to watch back, you know the goals of the season goals.
Yeah.
With the saxophones and stuff. It was brilliant, but. Callaghan would have set up a lot of the goals at the back end of the season. Yeah, he had a sweet when he put a cross in, it was beautiful, but he didn't do anything else. He was too lazy, so he's ended up being bombed out the team. Ormondroyd was brought in as a striker, but he almost lacked confidence to play as a striker. Yeah, so what happened was next season, in the season where we finished second, Ormondroyd got moved out. You wouldn't believe this, but Ormondroyd was playing left wing.
Now, I think I sort of remember that kind of experiment, and actually did.
Well, it worked.
Sort of got quite well there.
It works a treat. Yeah, so Ormondroyd's come in. He didn't really kick on that season, but he ended up being a bit of almost like a half-season cult hero. Yeah. So when he kind of got popped out on the left wing, played really well, but was not confident enough to be a striker.
There is something about having a really tall striker come on. There is just something that it does kind of galvanise. The fans kind of get behind it. It just brings something to it. There was half a season where we had Kevin Francis playing for us, and he did. He did sort of keep us up, and I don't think he knew what he was doing, but there was mayhem. When he was in the box, he got a couple of goals.
Is he from Blues?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, we got. I think we got him from Stockport, maybe. But he was pretty much injured by the time he came to us. But for just half a season, he sort of kept us up. He was quite something. So it is quite tight. That second season, it is interesting because actually throughout Taylor's career, he's not had up until that point. He's not, as a manager, nothing has sort of gone wrong for him. I think he's had one season at Watford where it sort of went a bit of adjustments on the way up. But his whole period there has gone well. Then he joins Villa, gets them promoted immediately. But I think this is probably a make or break moment for Taylor, because actually looking back at and just looking at the table, as you were saying, Stu, they are really close. It is only kind of 1 point in it in the end.
It's also one of those extended seasons because this is the same season that the Hillsborough would have happened. So Liverpool's fixtures and some of the other teams' fixtures have been changed. And I think Villa have finished their 38 games and West Ham still have 2 to play. And technically, if West Ham win both of those games, Villa will get relegated.
They won one. They won
the first, but then they're playing Liverpool. But yeah, they win the first one. So it must have been a bit of a squeaky bum time. Or were the Villa fans just super confident Liverpool at home, Anfield, will smash West Ham because they have to go for the championship?
Well, do you know what? Back then, I don't really, I don't recall it. So how I would find out about football would be on teletext and CFAX. Yeah. So it's like, that is as much information as I was getting. And because I live in Bedford, I don't have the local radio to, if you lived in Birmingham, you would listen to the local radio to listen to a Villa game. But back then, do you remember, I don't know if you guys remember this, but, you put CFAX on and it would just go, there'd be 3 pages, and it'd have the scores on. And then when it'd come back round, you'd be just like, that's how you'd celebrate a goal. It's like, you'd have a player, yes, that was how I was getting my information. So I don't even really recall it, but I do know that they got battered 5-0, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. It just relates to your story. I do remember in the 1980s being stood on the high street outside Dixon's as the television stuck on CFAX and teletext, just so you can get some football results. Because, like you said, you had one game on the radio generally, and it was normally the second half of the second half because they'd go around the ground. So you wouldn't even get a full commentary, and it depends on what that game was. So yeah, you were scratching and sniffing just to find out how your team was getting on in the 1980s.
I obviously remember that Friday night, that game on the Friday night, Arsenal at Liverpool. Yeah.
Absolutely crazy game. So Villa avoid relegation that year, and they are set up for their glorious following season where they finish second. And we'll talk about that some more after the break.
Do you have a team in mind that you'd like us to cover? Well, just don't keep it to yourself. Let us know. You can get in touch with us across the socials on X or Blue Sky. Graham is at Said and Dunn, and I am at Couch Pundito. That's on X and formerly known as Twitter, and also on Blue Sky. Remember, greatness isn't just the big and famous. We love a cult classic, and we love a good underdog story too. And also, watch this space. Some new channels coming your way.
So welcome back. We're talking about Graham Taylor's Aston Villa. I think kind of a forgotten period, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Graham Taylor and the legacy to come. Jamie, I must anyone who's watching this on YouTube will no doubt have some questions, as both me and Stuart had, about what on earth's shirt is that? That actually looked like there's an Oxford shirt from about 10 years ago, which had the yellow and blue stripes and had we had a big red circle sponsor, Birdie, bridal insurance or something. And I was sure it was like that, except for the sleeves. But what's going on with it?
Yeah, I think this is the closest shirt I've got to Oxford United since I gave you my Thames Valley Royal shirt, which sits behind you, my handiwork. No, this is Fenerbahce, the Turkish team on the Asian side of Istanbul. And I probably am one of the few people that owns a Fenerbahce, Besiktas and Galatasaray shirt. So any of our wonderful Turkish listeners can't say I'm biased, because I be donning a Georgie Hadji Galatasaray at some point as well.
And Fenerbahce, any reason why you got it on for this Villa side?
Well, you're very intuitive, Greg. Yeah, it's tenuous, but we're going to get to talking about post Graham Taylor, I hope, later down the line in the second half. And the man who comes in ahead of his time, I think, in terms of coming into British football, just comes at the wrong time. Joseph Englos, who Stu's going to be able to tell us all about. I'm looking forward to that. He managed Fenerbahce. It was his penultimate football team that he managed before he went to Celtic, won a cup, and then left the football world.
And Stu, I think you were able to dig up an even better Fenerbahce Villa connection.
Daly and Atkinson.
Daly and Atkinson, what a player.
God bless him.
Yeah, what a player.
That goal he scored at Wimbledon, not only was it an absolute beautiful goal, the celebration with the man with the umbrella.
With the umbrella, yeah.
Brilliant.
Well, when he passed away, all the Villa fans had umbrellas at the next game.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, so, with Atkinson, he was... the thing with Atkinson is he would turn up at any big game.
Yeah.
So if we were playing Man United, he's scoring. You know, he would turn up at any big game. But he would not be there. If we was playing Stoke on a Tuesday night, he would not be interested. So, yeah, what a player. That's what I used to love about him. He's like, whenever we was in a big game, he'd always be, I mean, in the Coca-Cola Cup semi-final, he scored in the last minute at Tranmere to keep us in the tie. And then the return tie, he scored in the last minute to get it into extra time. He was brilliant. Yeah, he was brilliant.
So for this 89-90 season, which ironically, we were a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the Crystal Palace side that made it into this year. You can see where our sweet spot of football is. Everything's in this same era.
Yeah.
I think we might rename the podcast by far the greatest team between 1988 and 1992. But it's interesting. I guess it's not obvious that Villa are going to make quite such a leap from having just avoided the drop to finishing second, which is quite an achievement. But I guess Paul McGrath coming in is quite a central arrival, and maybe Dwight York as well.
At the start of that season, if you imagine this, we've finished fourth from bottom, and then we sell our two best performers at the
of course, yes,
at the end of that season. So we sell Martin Keown and Alan McAnally. So coming into that season, we've brought Adrian Heath, Kent Nielsen. Kent Nielsen was decent.
Yeah.
And Paul McGrath. But when we brought Paul McGrath, we're buying Paul McGrath, who people think is kind of a has-been. Yeah. So going into the start of the season, there's not a lot of hope, really. kind of just survive again. And then we start off the season. This is what happens. We start off that season and we drew with Forest at the City Ground. It was a great result. We then drew at home to Liverpool. And then we went on a run where we had a few bad results. And then what happened there was we played Crystal Palace at home. And Trevor Francis, who you couldn't think of a worse person to come to Villa Park and score a hat-trick than Trevor Francis, yeah? He's come there, scored a hat-trick, and it was horrible. So what happened was we're going into a game against Derby after about 8 games in, and we're right near the bottom of the table. And Graham Taylor has said post this season that if we'd have lost that game against Derby, he would have handed in his notice. He was ready to go because the season before, the start to this season, he's brought Adrian Heath. He can't score any goals. Paul McGrath at the time was not really firing it on yet, and nothing's going right. So this Derby, we played Derby and we win 1-0. But during that game, Derby absolutely battered us. At the end of the game, Graham Taylor gives an interview and he says that what happens if Dean Saunders scores all them chances? We lose 3-4-1 and then I'm the world's worst manager. He goes, so the thing is, he goes, I don't really worry whether I win or I lose. I just get on and enjoy my life. That was what he quoted. That's what he said. But after that Derby game, we then had 3 games where it was Man City away, Luton away, and Crystal Palace at home. And we won them 3 games. Now, that run of 4 games, we've got 4 wins out of 4, yeah? But them 4 games, if you spread them around the season, it wouldn't be that unusual for us to win them 4 games. Yeah. But if you put them all together, what happened was, you put them 4 games together, we've won all 4. And then what happened was we went into the big match against Everton at home. And at the time, Everton are a very good team. They've just taken our best centre-back, Martin Keown. They've got Cottee up front. I think they just signed Peter Beagrie. They were a good team. Yeah. If Everton had won that day, they would have gone top of the league. We're about 12 games into the season. Yeah. Villa was 6-0 up after an hour. Yep. Yeah. So that was the game where, like Platt, that's when people started taking notice of David Platt. Yeah, he scored a brilliant goal where he's turned Keown inside out and then just tucked it. It was great. Southall was in goal. But yeah, we won that game 6-2. And then from there, we're then 4th in the league. And then from there, you're just, with the same bunch of players, we've kind of struck upon this team with Ormondroyd on the left, Daly on the right, only up front. And we've got a bit of momentum. And it's all about momentum and luck, really, isn't it? Because the same group of players that have just finished 4th from bottom. And because they've won them few games on the bounce, they've got all the confidence. And then we just had a period in the autumn where we was on fire. So if you was going to say by far the greatest team, I would say for that autumn, the greatest team the world has ever seen for that autumn.
It's an incredible run, actually. Yeah. It's 15. Looking at it, it looks like 15 wins out of 18. And the only draw is a draw with Liverpool. So who are, and this is who Villa are up against in the sort of the title challenge. And this is probably the best Liverpool side, certainly I can remember, I think, where you have Barnes, Beardsley and everyone else rocking away. So that run is just unbelievable. And as you say, just something happens. So it does feel like that Everton game is the turning point of it. Graham Taylor's obviously quite relaxed about things by this stage, and obviously it's interesting him talking about depending on whether a goal goes in or not is whether you're a great manager or a bad manager. Now he did his chairman is Doug Ellis, Deadly Doug as he was known.
Deadly Doug.
So he knows he's pretty much permanently on the edge. And I mean, Graham Taylor couldn't have had more different chairman, could he? You have basically the greatest chairman in the world in Elton John. And then you have Doug Ellis. A chalk and cheese experience.
Cheese indeed, yeah.
Doug Ellis is the only chairman I know who named a stand after himself when he wasn't even popular. He's really unpopular, and he named a stand after himself.
Mind you, Oxford have got a ground named after our old chairman, Firoz Kassam.
Oh, good. I always thought you was going to say Robert Maxwell there.
But it's interesting. I hadn't really thought about the relationship that Graham Taylor had come from. Because, the partnership with Elton John is the most unlikely partnership in football, but it worked at some level. But yeah, with Doug Ellis, it really is chalk and cheese, because Doug Ellis was very hands-on, wasn't he, Stu? I think he was a kind of reputation for being really tight with the funds as well, although he's definitely given funds to Taylor to buy players, but players have gone out the door as well. But yeah, what was their relationship, do you know?
I remember seeing an interview when Graham Taylor first come in, where there was talk that he weren't getting on with Ellis and he was going to go very early on. But I think he managed to manage that situation. I know that Ron Atkinson couldn't bear him. Yeah. And Ron Atkinson would just tell him to, because I think Doug Ellis wanted to know the teams before anyway. He was kind of like, it was just, I think he said, Doug Ellis said that he invented the bicycle kick. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, he said he invented the bicycle kick. I think he said that he found Dwight York. He said that he scouted Dwight York. So, yeah, Doug Ellis was definitely a character. But in and around that time, there were so many chairmen that were characters, weren't there? Ken Bates and all them guys.
Yeah, Peter Swales. Yeah, there was full of them. It really.
They hadn't had the media training, had they? So they were kind of you were just getting them all.
They'd been in their jobs for a long time as owners of these football teams, and they'd been there for a very long time. And yeah, they weren't exactly modern thinkers. But I just want to go back to the Derby game, Stu. And I love that Taylor's talking about if Saunders is having a better day, the whole narrative is completely different. But I think this really talks about Taylor as a quality individual. He always struck me as somebody who was super honest, super kind, always willing to give you his time, but also would say it as he saw it and wouldn't be shy about that. He was very much a firm, direct talker, but in a pretty nice, polite way. I think this is just the qualities he had. So you talked about him walking, but there must have been something in Graham Taylor that the players loved and wanted to play for this guy in order to make him feel better about maybe walking if they are going to be losing that game to Derby, as opposed to not walking when they do beat Derby by the one goal. Do you think his relationship with the players plays a part in that, in terms of the qualities of Taylor?
I think when he first come in at Villa, and he kind of went back to basics, where he got the players out in the community, like going into the hospitals and doing lots of work like that. I think when I'm reading Gary Thompson's book, he said that he got the players taking home their kit and washing it because they'd all got a bit above themselves, because like I say, they got relegated, but they were a team that, if you look down the list, they shouldn't have been getting relegated. But also, he'd get players in that he could manage, So I think that's probably why Callaghan didn't work out, because he couldn't manage him. I actually think when I've watched back that Villa Derby game, because that's what we do, isn't it? Yeah, that Villa Derby game. It says, like, I've watched the highlights of that game, and it's a tough watch. But at the start of it says Nigel Callaghan's handed in a transfer request. That's what they did, didn't they?
Yeah.
Handed in a transfer request. But yeah, I think it was a lot about team spirit, wasn't it? Because if you look at the list of players that have just finished second in the league, like you say, Ormondroyd, Only, Daly, Mountfield, Chris Price, Kevin Gage. These are not players that should be competing with Arsenal, Liverpool, and Spurs.
You have a Liverpool. Liverpool have Beardsley, Barnes, Rush, Drudge, whoever is playing at the time. I mean, that they'd assembled this. Houghton was with them by then. They'd assembled this side, which was ludicrously good across the front three. And there's Villa competing with Ian Ormondroyd on the left. Well, this is incredible.
And Ian Only.
Yeah.
Ian Olney's just come through the youth team. He was quite gangly as well, but he's surprisingly good at holding up the play. The problem what happened with this team was after that autumn was coming into the spring. We've got 10 games left, and Graham Taylor wants to buy a striker just to get us over the finishing line. Yeah, at the time we're top of the league. Yeah, he went to Millwall and brought back Tony Cascarino. And Teddy Sheringham was there, Yeah. That's where it all went wrong.
Yeah.
But he's brought back Tony Cascarino, put him in a team, took Onley out, and it just didn't work. So when I think back of Graham Taylor's time at Villa, and that's the key moment there, really, which it just baffles me because he's great at spotting talent. He's brought Platt, he's brought Cowns, he's brought McGrath, he's brought Dwight York, he's brought all these great players. He brought Adrian Heath, who's a good, decent footballer. When he's going to scout Millwall, how is he seeing Cascarino is better than Sheringham? How is he seeing that? You could watch 20 minutes of Millwall and see Sheringham.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we've covered this when we did that very Millwall team, because I think we talked about when Cascarino does move on, Sheringham is still scoring almost the same volume of goals as they were collectively.
Right.
And so I think that's right, Graham. Have I got that right?
Yeah. I mean, Sheringham's just an unbelievable player in that he can be both a 10 and a 9 and do both of them better than
have no pace.
anyone.
Have no pace and still be absolutely
he shouldn't be.
Anyone. So sure, I mean, this is March when Cascarino arrives. So this is the transfer window of old where you could play 5 players right up until the end of March. When I learned when Cascarino was signed, so I didn't realise it was in the March. I thought it was early on in the season, but in the research to this podcast, I realised it was in March. Sino Esprilla and Newcastle United and Kevin Keegan. Right? Do you think it's almost like that Kevin Keegan moment? Taylor knows he needs something extra, maybe not trusting his team for the run-in, so he's bought a classic tall striker, a very proven goal scorer actually, in the top flight at that particular moment. He's scoring goals for Millwall, and he had been in the second tier as well. But do you think the purchase potentially upset the apple cart?
It completely upset the apple cart. It'd have been better off signing no one, but obviously, in my 10-year-old mind, it was brilliant because Cascarino used to score against Villa. So I just wow, we've brought Cascarino. He seemed like a great signing at the time, but with anyone with any real football knowledge would say, because people used to tell me how good Paul McGrath was. I didn't know because I was 10. I used to think Tony Daly was the best footballer ever. But to a trained football guy like Graham Taylor had, he should have come back with Sheringham. And this is the thing. It's like, if he had come back with Sheringham, I think we would have won the league. Cascarino was brought to win us the league. He was there for 10 games, yeah? He didn't score until the penultimate game when the league had pretty much gone. So he's gone 8 games. He's been brought in as the sole striker, 8 games, no goals. What? It's like great. The penultimate game he comes in, he scores, but the league's already lost. His second goal at Villa was an own goal. Yeah.
In the table as well. It was really nip and tuck between Liverpool and Villa when he came.
Until the last 3 games, yeah.
Yeah, mid-March. It's 2 points between you with 8 games to go. So, yeah, I mean, it really is nip and tuck.
Yeah, so, that's when Cascarino's in. But like I was saying, we kind of was on our way down. So we went top of the league against Spurs at White Hart Lane. And I'm kind of thinking, I'm not sure when it was. That would have been about February, I think. But when we won that, we went 2 points clear, yeah? And then we had Wimbledon at home on a Saturday. I think Liverpool would have been playing on the Sunday. And if we'd have beat Wimbledon, we'd have been 5 points clear. That's huge, isn't it? And then we had Coventry away. But after about half an hour, David Platt misses a penalty. And we went on to lose that game 3-0. But I don't think that game would have won us. If we'd have won that game, we'd have won the league. But I honestly do think if we'd brought Sheringham in rather than Cascarino, I think we'd have won the league. Or even if we'd have started the season with McAnally rather than Olney.
I totally agree. I think it's a brilliant observation. I hadn't really considered it, but Sheringham would have been a different flavour completely. And I think, he would have just moved you into a different space. Conversely, though, Liverpool, I don't know if you remember, they also signed a striker in this.
Rosen.
Yeah, Ronnie Rosenthal, who goes on to have his own glorious moment at Villa Park later down the line. Yeah, he comes in for Liverpool and he does deliver the goods. He does
He
back.
scores a hat-trick
Yeah.
in his first game.
Yeah.
Yeah, he scores a hat-trick at Charlton, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I
I'm
think.
not sure who it was against, but I know
He scores a hat-trick at Charlton
crazy.
in midweek.
Yeah, it is. I guess it's sort of a reminder of how difficult it is to win the league as well, isn't it? It's kind of so whilst Villa are going through this 15 wins out of 18, you're just kind of beating all comers. But and as you say, you're doing it with and this is no disrespect to Kevin Gage, but you're doing it with Kevin Gage in the side. This isn't.
Yeah.
This is sort of a definition of a journeyman decent pro, but not someone you're thinking among football's elite. And so part of you is kind of thinking that we can't keep winning, this can't keep going. But when you're on that run, sort of almost anything is achievable. I can imagine that Wimbledon game, and I think you lose the game to Coventry the next week.
Yeah.
And
that was on the big match as well.
Was it?
That was on the big match, yeah. And we usually beat Coventry as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a killer. Can I just mention again, there's like a little Christmas period where my brother would kill me if I didn't mention it. We played on Boxing Day, we played Man United and beat them 3-0. We then played Arsenal about 2 days later and beat them 2-1. And then on New Year's Day, we went to Chelsea and won 3-0. My brother says that was he said that's the best Christmas period of our lifetime. It's got to be, in it.
That is Happy Christmas and a Merry New Year, isn't it?
Yeah. Because this is Villa who are usually getting battered by these teams.
That run is incredible, isn't it? Because they don't just win those games.
Yep.
They beat United 3-0. They beat Chelsea 3-0 at
3-0,
Stamford Bridge. Beat Arsenal 2-1. So it is really the absolutely living the dream at this stage.
The Arsenal 2-1's probably my favourite because Arsenal were all over us. They were all over us and they were really good. When we broke away and got the second goal, just to kill the game off. That was brilliant. Yeah, because the Arsenal will compete. When we played them, I think they might have been above us in the league. That was probably my favourite. Well, no, my favourite's the Everton game, but that was probably right up there, that Arsenal game.
Defending champions as well.
Defending champions, yeah.
You very nearly. I was just looking at it because obviously you then play the same three teams in 3 consecutive games right at the back end of the season and beat Arsenal at Highbury.
Yes, that was on the big match as well. That was a midweek game on the big match. That's the only time I've seen Cascarino do anything good in a Villa shirt. He held the ball up and popped it through. He held the ball up and then knocked it through to Chris Price. It was like last 10 minutes. Brilliant. Yeah, my brother was at that game, yeah.
Then beat Chelsea 1-0, and it's only Man United which stops you doing the double-double against those 3 sides. United win that one 2-0, but almost beating the 3 sides again. So Villa fall just short. They finish actually almost in no man's land, aren't they? They're kind of 9 points off Liverpool in top, but they're 7 points ahead of Spurs in third. And so, to finish second is extraordinary, but at this stage, obviously, England come calling, don't they? And I think again we see some of that with Taylor's time at England. You almost see some of that same kind of snobbery that Taylor's had all his life, because I think there was lots of talk about, well, he hasn't played at the highest level, which seems like a really odd thing to complain about now when you look at Mourinho or whatever. But also this kind of almost this reputation for having kind of not managed big sides, except Villa, big sides and big players. But Villa are a big side and he has managed big players.
I think what didn't help him as well was he'd never won anything. Like that was the if he'd have gone into that, imagine if he'd have gone into the England job having won the league with Villa. I think he'd have had a different kind of respect from the players. But from what I've heard, straight away the players weren't having him. The thing is with Graham Taylor is that he makes some crazy decisions that you can't legislate for. I love the man. I absolutely adore him, yeah? And he's my favourite ever manager. But he didn't pick Chris Waddle. And Chris Waddle was the best winger in Europe at the time. You know, it just doesn't make sense. But as well as that, there is a lot of bad luck with that. You think about the Euro 92, when he's come into that. Gascoigne's out. Barnes is out. I think Barnes might have got injured just before it.
Yeah.
If you imagine this, sliding door moment.
Yep.
We're in the Euro 92. We've just drawn with Denmark, which is not a great result, but imagine we drew with Switzerland in Euro 96. So at the start, so we drew with Ireland in Italia 90. So the first game we got out of it with a point. Yeah. The second game we're playing France. France in that tournament were the favourites. Yeah, they had Jean-Pierre Papin up front, who was on fire, and I think they'd gone undefeated in their qualifying.
Yeah.
We're playing France. It's 0-0. It's the game's coming towards the end, and Stuart Pearce has a free kick. He slashes this free kick. It smacks the crossbar. But when that's coming down, it bounces the wrong side of the line for Graham Taylor and for us, yeah? But if that bounces the other side of the line, my argument is this, is we've then, in the Euros, we have then just beat the favourites. We're on 4 points. We're pretty much going to be in the semi-final. Graham Taylor's story, we're about 3 inches away from Graham Taylor's story being completely different.
Yeah.
You then don't have that headline, the turnip headline, do you? So it's kind of like he was very unlucky as England manager, but as unlucky as he was, he was unlucky with the Koeman sending off. That was ridiculous. He was unlucky with injuries. But as much as he was unlucky, he still picked Andy Sinton over Chris Waddle. So it's true though, isn't it?
I totally agree with you. I do think Graham Taylor was very unlucky with the timing of being the England manager, because it wasn't just what was going on the pitch. I think the questions you raise about Waddle and Sinton are fair, but I think this goes back to the fact that he's trying to balance the creativity. So he's got Gascoigne in there, and maybe in Taylor's head he's thinking, I can only afford Gascoigne or Waddle. I can't play both. And I have seen quotes where Taylor's justified his decision on Waddle and said, well, if I play Waddle, I need to change the whole team. So he clearly has a different view in terms of what Chris Waddle is as a player. So he's sticking true to his form. But we touched on this, Graham, in the England 1990 episode with Steve Double. Football is changing in England. This is a period of time where everything is changing. The whole club's European football being excluded from European football is ending. Italia 90 has changed the narrative, and TV is now becoming super interested in football as a commercial venture. And I think this leads to Channel 4 commissioning the documentary to follow Graham Taylor around as England manager. Unprecedented, never been done before. And I think to Taylor's credit, he said, yeah, I'll do this because I want to inform the public. I want to share with the public how difficult this job is. It's not just about picking 11 players and chucking them out there. There's so many nuances that go with running this job. So he's taken on this strange responsibility of being filmed at a time where football culture is changing in the UK, but also he's doing it on the back where he's probably come from an old school and he's a decent guy. He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
He probably never saw that if it turned bad, he would be exploited and be made fun of. I mean, the turnip stuff is disgraceful. I remember that as a kid even. I just thought that was wrong. I remember it was one of the red top newspapers and they'd kind of superimposed Photoshop.
It's a shame because
the wrong thing to do.
It is because oddly, the headline itself is quite funny. Swedes 2, turnip 1. That is fine. It's putting the turnip, the superimposing the turnip on his head, and it does talk about it. I was thinking about it. It's a really different kind of. It shows the era. You think now. On the one hand, I think, it must be terrible being a player now because you just get abused on. You have one bad game, and if you want to look up yourself on Twitter or whatever, you can find yourself being abused by whoever. But actually, especially for the England manager, I don't think there was ever a harder time than that period. Bobby Robson had it before as well, where you are kind of ridiculed in media, which everyone is seeing. The Sun is like this, so that headline's in the Sun, and from that moment on, there's no one who's not hearing this.
also the expectations have been raised. Bobby Robson's taken England to the semi-finals of a World Cup when we're expecting to be talking about hooliganism. We're actually talking about pride in the England national team for the first time since probably 1970. So, I mean, it's just the whole timing for Taylor, the whole mix of the whole dolly mixture of stuff that's going on is just unfortunate. But I agree, Stu. I don't think he helps himself with some of his selection. For the lick of paint on a crossbar, it could have been different in Euro 92. And then suddenly that may change the narrative in terms of going on to qualify for the World Cup. And even that was unlucky. Norway, a generation influenced by Charles Hughes himself in terms of playing positions of maximum opportunity. That's the style Norway are playing. You know, they are playing, if you want to boil it down to just rudimental stuff, long ball football. But they've got a generation of players coming through that are now playing in the Premier League. It's just one of those teams. They were ranked, I think they were seeded 4 or 5 in the groups when they were drawn. They topped the group with Netherlands, England, and Poland. It's a generation of Norwegian footballers. Just bad timing for Graham Taylor.
It's an extraordinary thing when you look back on it, because there is this disproportionate punishment that he pays for, you know, a reputation which is qualifying for 1 Euros and missing out on another World Cup. That isn't, you know, he's not the only England manager to fail to qualify for something. But there's an additional punishment and price that he pays compared to other people. He gets the job at Wolves and he does okay there. The second season doesn't start brilliantly, but he's kind of hounded out there.
Yeah.
Dude, and I remember going to watch a Watford game with a mate of mine after Elton John gets him back in, because I'm almost surprised that he managed again after the Wolves thing, but he goes back to Watford. He's immediately successful there again. And I remember going to that game. I watched the game at Craven Cottage, and as Graham Taylor's walking across, he has to walk across the pitch to get to the dugout.
Yeah,
and you have an entire end of Watford fans doing the "we're not worthy." You know, this is God walking in front of him. And at the Fulham end, you know, it's just, you know, this is not public enemy number 1, but this is like a laughing stock. And it's weird because around that time, you probably had Watford, Lincoln, and Aston Villa are probably the only places in the country that actually,
whatever you say,
would have kind of given him the respect he deserved.
Yeah. He come back to Villa as well.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And guess who he brought? Peter Crouch. He did. He really did.
The ultimate.
True, isn't it?
That's fantastic. But you know what? England aside, what Graham Taylor has done, he's restored Aston Villa to their rightful place. In this 3-year period, he's got Aston Villa out of what was a poor situation in 1987, challenged for a league title, and he leaves them in a pretty good place, Stu. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say that his main influence on Villa going forward was that in that first season, if he hadn't come in, then we could have gone down again. Yeah, I think that was his main bit. When we come up, and then Dr. Joe didn't really do a lot with the team. Ron Atkinson tore the team up. Yeah, but Graham Taylor kept us from spinning down another division, I reckon.
Well, Dr. Joe is an incredible appointment, wasn't it? Because that is really left field and absolutely pioneering, because I think he must be the first kind of international manager.
He was, wasn't he? Yeah.
How would Doug Ellis be connected to somebody in Czechoslovakia?
That is a burning question.
Well, was he cheap?
Yeah, I reckon that's the answer. He found it. Yeah. Yeah, well, he just managed Czechoslovakia in the World Cup.
Yes, quarterfinals.
So then he's come in. English teams are back in Europe. Guess who our first game against is Baník Ostrava, which is a Czechoslovakian team. Yeah, and so we went there. We beat them over 2 legs. He signed a player called Ivo Stash, from Baník Ostrava. Yeah, he never actually played for Villa, but when we played against him in the UEFA Cup, he scored an own goal. So a quiz question is, which Villa player scored a goal for us but never actually played a game for us? Ivo Stash, yeah.
Wow.
That is fantastic.
Yeah. So he signed him. He signed Gary Penrice. Yeah. He signed Gary Penrice and he signed Neil Cox.
Mm.
And out of them, Neil Cox ended up being a good utility player. But yeah, but Dr. Joe's come in and, like I say, he seemed like too sweet of a guy to impose himself on the team. So the team are still doing what they're doing. They're still living as a 1980s football team. Yeah.
Yeah. They've got.
And he's coming in.
They've got Paul McGrath as the heartbeat of it.
Yeah. Exactly that. Yeah. So Weghorst just stayed for one season, and it was almost like just a nothing season, really. We had that Inter Milan. So we played Inter Milan after we beat Banik Ostrava. And Inter Milan, you think about this Inter Milan team, they just won the World Cup, West Germany. Inter Milan had Klinsmann, Matthias and Bremer playing for him, yeah? And then the rest of the players were all Italian internationals.
Berti was in.
Yeah, pretty much. Wenger in goal.
Yeah.
Berti, yeah, Nicola Berti, Bergami at the back.
Yeah.
So they had an amazing team. They would have been favourites for the UEFA Cup. And back then, UEFA Cup would have been on a par with the European Cup, would you say? Like a little bit below it?
Yeah, I mean, it's the teams that finished second.
Yeah.
Fourth generally, wasn't it? So modern day Champions League now.
Exactly, yes. So we beat them 2-0 at Villa Park. This is where so Nielsen scored and Platt scored, but Cowns put it on a plate for Platt. In the return leg at the San Siro, I kind of remember this game as in about 4 months before, I was watching Italia 90 and you was watching Argentina play Cameroon in the San Siro. And I was thinking, wow, imagine Villa playing there. And then 4 months later, we were getting battered there by Inter Milan. So it's like, careful what you wish for, you know?
The record books show that Villa only lost by a single goal. So it doesn't look bad.
And that was well out of play when he crossed it. So yeah, we lost 3-0 in that game. And then that was about it really for the season. Do
you think he was just too early? Because you mentioned in the build-up to this that he didn't bring any of his team across. He was focused on tactics and diet and player health and player welfare. Didn't have English as his first language. Do you think it was just if he would have came after Wenger, he would have probably done a bit better, probably been accepted, I should say, into the culture of things?
Yeah, I think he needed to come a little bit later. You needed to come. When did Wenger come? Did he come after the Euro 96?
Yeah, he came, 95, 96. I think he came around about then.
So just before Euro 96. But the Premier League was kicking off then. Weghorst was just it was just one person. But everything was the same apart from him. He couldn't. So it was just crazy Doug Ellis has just kind of expected there to be some sort of miracle from just one. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It did. There was nothing brought in around him, no structure or anything like that. So it was always going to fail.
Yeah, he's got he's doing it with one arm tied behind his back, isn't it? And it is extraordinary to think of just having one player coming in, one manager coming in to try and change the direction of a club. It's it's just not possible, and especially a club which is kind of a team that's been really rooted in sort of team spirit. It's got players who are kind of overperforming probably, and then you expect kind of a brilliant tactical coach to come in and get them playing a continental fashion. So it was probably always a big ask.
Give you a little fact. I don't think it's as good as the own goal fact that Stu shared with us, but he did leave an impression though, because Joseph Weghorst is mentioned they featured on this before, Half Man, Half Biscuit song.
Excellent.
I think the song's called This One's For Now. And Joseph Weghorst is actually a lyric in that song. So the same band that sung about Dukla Park, Awake It, is also singing about Joseph Weghorst as well.
What did they find?
So why are they?
So they're a Liverpudlian band.
Yeah.
Half Man, Half Biscuit. I think.
What did they find to rhyme with Weghorst? Loss?
No.
Loss?
So no. I mean, I don't know this song. You may know, Graham, but yeah, the lyric is, "I've just seen Weghorst in Rock Ferry buying energy drinks. He's definitely taken over." So yeah, I don't know the cultural reference, but what I do know is that Jose Bengals left an impression on British culture.
He went Celtic, didn't he?
He was at
Yes.
Celtic, yeah, he
Yeah.
was. He's a bit of a journeyman. He's not like a Claudio Ranieri, but he's a man who's travelled about. He's managed in Australia, Malaysia, in Turkey. Yeah, he's been around.
And it's interesting you say so after he goes, Ron Atkinson comes in and you say kind of rips the team up a little bit, but obviously he's got, by this stage, presumably he's got Dwight York in his prime and bits and pieces, but it's the Villa bright spark continues, doesn't it?
Am I right in thinking, Stu, before you come on that, is Nigel Spink still at Villa when Ron Atkinson takes over?
Yeah, so Nigel Spink is in goal when Atkinson takes over, but Atkinson brings in Bosnich.
Yes,
Yes,
he
of
does.
course.
Bosnich starts to come in during the season. So the first season Atkinson's in, he does come in and tear up the team. Interestingly, and I love this about Ron Atkinson, is he doesn't hide the fact that he was thinking about selling McGrath. When he came in, he thought, I might have to get rid of McGrath, but he goes, and then I saw him play. And then I thought, oh.
It's good to know that he'd done his due diligence before he took the Villa job.
Well, he used to manage McGrath. He used to manage McGrath at United, didn't he? But he kind of thought, when he's come in, he's thought he's probably passed it by now, but he weren't. The interesting thing about Paul McGrath is the season that Villa finished second, 89, David Platt got PFA Player of the Year, but Paul McGrath got the Villa Supporters Player of the Year, ahead of Platt. Yeah, so Paul McGrath was that good, Paul McGrath, I think, out of 5 or 6 seasons he was at Villa, he got put Supporters Player 4 or 5 at a times. Yeah. So when Atkinson came in, he had McGrath and he played York, but he was playing York and it was almost like he was squeezing him in, left wing, sometimes up front. York was still quite young. So York first season finished up top scorer, but it was more by accident. Ron Atkinson wanted Atkinson up there, Daly and Atkinson, and then the next season he got Dean Saunders to partner him, and that was a brilliant partnership.
Yeah,
but not for long. Only for same as that season we were talking about. It was like half a season where they were brilliant.
I have an abiding memory of Dwight York, and I didn't really know who Dwight York was in the mid 1990s when he was in this Villa team. Obviously, I'd come to get really familiar with his brilliance, but this was around about the time, believe it or not, this is when fantasy football was just starting. The Daily Telegraph, the paper, had started this fantasy football, and the first one I think was started late season as well. It wasn't started at the early season, and for the first couple of seasons, they were the only edition doing it. There was no TV involved. It was just the Daily Telegraph Fantasy Football League. How it's changed, right? But they had Dwight York down as a midfield player, and I remember thinking, I'm having him. Oh my God, the amount of points, because it was a time where they wouldn't reclassify players. So I had Dwight York from the start. I think his second season at Villa, or maybe his third season, when he was playing as an attacking midfielder, but mostly up front as well when he was getting games. And the amount of points he got, I think I won my league so comfortable just because I got Dwight York in early doors.
He'd been cheap as well, wasn't he?
He was super cheap. And it was back in the day where you can't believe I'm saying this. If you wanted to make transfers, you had to post it to the Daily Telegraph. Physically post your transfers to the Daily Telegraph. Fax it. Should have been faxing it, shouldn't we? We should have been faxing our transfers.
That's like when you was talking about the abuse Graham Taylor would be getting online. I remember on that documentary, he sat round the table with his missus opening the post, isn't he? The fan mail.
I think the moment probably Taylor, because I think Graham Taylor does the happiness of this story is that I think Graham Taylor goes on to become a national treasure by the end of his football. Understands what Taylor achieved, and actually, he's really probably. There's only one job which he's probably not done well. It just turns out to be the biggest job of all. But I think probably the turning point for him is possibly that Yellow Pages ad with Terry Venables after the 96 Euros, which kind of just shows a.
I don't remember it.
No, I don't. I'm guessing it says I do not like that.
Yes, yeah. They're arranging I think he's arranging some flowers to be sent to.
Is it Terry Venables is finishing his time as England manager?
Yes, it's something like that. I think it's after the cup, after the Euro '96 penalties, and the bit I remember mostly on it is Graham Taylor. So Graham Taylor calls Bobby Robson, and they say, "Oh, we're going to. I think this would be a good idea." Blah blah blah. And he's arranging these flowers. Look, obviously, the Yellow Pages ad. This is telling its own story. It looks up a florist, and then he asks what colour is it, and obviously Taylor says, "Do I not like orange?" And then the flowers or whatever are sent to Terry Venables. And I think that moment is the bit where you see him as a kind of on an equal, as a peer to Bobby Robson and Terry Venables, because actually they were.
He was, yeah.
And I think you think that maybe, once the distance had gone from the whole turnip stuff, you kind of start to see him in a different light. And I think it's great. As you say, he went back to Watford, successful. He went back to Villa, did well there.
Did a lot of punditry on radio and TV as well. And he was always brilliant to listen to. I used to love listening to him. He just, the way he articulated about the game was just fantastic. He just give you the insights that you just wouldn't get from any regular pundit.
I think I've heard stories about him just go on a Sunday morning going down to watch the local kids playing and stuff. Yeah, have you heard that?
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's just a wonderful story though, isn't it? How
Yeah,
the things he really was.
And I think
I think the thing that killed him was that documentary.
Yes.
Like that, when he's going, Hitler's. It's like, these things just stay, don't they?
There is a brilliant in that bit in that document. There's lots of brilliant things in that documentary, but it's the Koeman moment where Koeman's pulled Platt back, and it looks like a sending off. It looks like a penalty. Koeman doesn't get sent off. England don't get a penalty, and Taylor's just going up and down the line, linesman going on, and in the background you've got this kind of vacant expression on Laurie McMenady's face. It's brilliant editing. It's only after a matter of moments when Taylor's been doing everything in terms of like really emotionally spending everything on the line. McMenemy goes, he didn't even give a fucking penalty. It's just hilarious. You couldn't even script it. It's just so funny. And then McMenemy kind of resigns and sits back down. It's just like, fair play for Taylor for doing it. It's a brave thing to do. But it is TV gold. It really is.
Yeah.
It's quite hard to, as much because I love him.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch.
I can imagine, Stu, I really can. But I mean, commend him totally for having the balls to do it. And he did it because he really wanted to inform and give an insight to the regular man and woman on the street that there's more to this England job than just putting names on a sheet of paper.
Who's the assistant who, whatever Taylor does, he copies?
Neil.
Phil Neal, yeah.
Like,
I think
he's going like
the amazing thing about that documentary is it ruined Graham Taylor's reputation, but he doesn't even come out of it worse than anyone.
Yeah.
Right, we ought to get to ranking this side. That's what we're here for. As a reminder, we've got 5 categories of greatness, from all-time greats to the top, true greats. It's the second category, touch of greatness, our middle category, edge of greatness, and blink of greats. Jamie, do you want to start us off?
I will start us off. Really tricky. Definitely heart and head fighting against each other on this, because we can't overlook the fact that other than a promotion from the second tier and a runner-up spot, there's no silverware, which always helps us when we're kind of trying to push the ranking. But there's way more to this story in terms of greatness than just winning trophies. Taylor's come in, he's taken over what feels to me like a pretty poor Aston Villa, spiraling out of control and potentially going to be spending a few seasons in the second tier. He turns that around immediately, and he ends in his 3-year spell restoring Aston Villa to the top table in English football. They're back to where they were 10 years previously, when they were winning the top tier and then going on and winning European Cup. So that's an incredible feat that he's done. We've talked about some of the plays he's brought in and how he's balanced creativity with pragmatism. I'm going to kick us off. I'm going to let my heart rule for the moment, and I'll see where you guys go. But I think there's definitely a case this is more of an edge, but I'm going to start with touch, because I like the Graham Taylor angle on this, and I think there's a human side to this story that I've failed to overlook. My heart is warming so much to Graham Taylor.
Touch of greatness, our middle tier 3 category. Stuart, what do you reckon?
I've got to go touch of greatness too, because at the end of the day, like I said, he's signed Paul McGrath and Gordon Cowles. So for me, it's got to be touch of greatness. These two are Villa's greatest 2 players.
Yeah, I love it. I think there's also I think the interesting thing about this, there's also the what if, isn't there? As to where, because this is a story that ends before its time because the England job comes knocking. So you kind of never really get to see what
will happen next season.
Yeah, exactly. And if you've been given the chance, and that journey that he's been on with Villa is unbelievable. I was going to go touch. It's boring to occupy the same ground, but I don't.
Great minds.
I don't think you. I don't think you can ignore the job he's done. And you were right, Stuart. It's that point about when you're managing a big side and playing at Villa Park in the 80s. And Villa Park is both a fantastic weapon and also a disaster. When it's going well, it's brilliant. But when it isn't,
and it's empty, that
could have gone so badly wrong. So I think you can't, and it's no surprise that Graham Taylor managed to get Aston Villa promoted, because that's basically what he's done throughout his entire time as a manager. But I love this story because I think, one of the criticisms of Taylor probably is that he was kind of a brilliant lower league manager and wasn't given the respect for what he did at a higher level. And here he is, he's taken a massive club and he's taken them back to the top table. So without a doubt, I think we're going to say Graham Taylor's Aston Villa, touch of greatness.
Brilliant.
Stuart, that's been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I love coming on.
It's a great story. I'm glad you suggested this story in particular, because like I say, I do think it is a bit underestimated. And when you think about, most people when they think about Villa, they're thinking about the kind of 81, 82 side. Unless you're like me and I just think about that mad John Gregory period where people suddenly thought he was going to be the future.
Yeah, when he got Gareth Barry.
Yeah.
Him and Gareth Barry. He was going to be manager and Gareth Barry was going to be captain.
It was genuinely close.
That was going to be the England future.
I don't remember a moment where someone dropped off from being England manager to, more quickly.
No, I've still got a soft spot for John Gregory.
Yeah. Well, John Gregory, there's a hint of the... You get a few kind of managers. There's a hint of the Gareth Ainsworth about him, this kind of too cool for school, wasn't it? And kind of...
Yeah, but he would be a bit like Dave Bassett. What is it, Dave Bassett? Mike Bassett. He liked being superstitious, and like if he sat in the stand one game, then he'd have to sit in the stand and come down at a certain period and wear a tracksuit this week. He was all about that, he was a character.
John Gregory definitely predates media training.
Yeah. Oh yeah, what he said about Dwight York.
Yeah.
If I'd have had a gun, I'd have shot him. What he said, wasn't
it? Just quickly, this is boring trivia, but we didn't dwell on the England-Holland game too much. We focused on the documentary, so we had our priorities in the right order. But the referee, Carl Joseph Asamacher, was a German referee that day. That was his very last assignment. FIFA took him up a list after that, so they deemed his performance to be to a substandard. So he was scheduled to ref in November, but he was taken off the list. And he never ref for FIFA again. So just adding into the mix of a bit of bad luck for our man Graham Taylor.
It's the equivalent of scoring a hat-trick of own goals, isn't it? Like, it's like, how did he not send him off?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I mean, I remember being kind of disappointed at the time, but it's one where I watch it back now, sort of 30, 40, how many years it is since.
And just like, what?
But
what was going through his mind?
It's the free kick that Koeman scores. He does it second approach because the referee deems there's encroachment. I think there was encroachment in fairness. I mean, and I think an England player gets a yellow card. So it's just like, he seems to be, I don't know, he's got a few quid on Koeman, isn't he? That night. So, he's going to flick it.
Good stuff. And we will, thanks, Stu. Thank you, Jamie, as ever. And we will be back next week.